Hello, and welcome to the Both and podcast, where we use both hemispheres of our brains and our hearts to discuss matters of education, behavioral health, social justice, identity, and anything else that might require a both and perspective. Each week during the show, we check in on these issues and present a challenge to one another and to you in order to ensure our words are met with action. I'm Ben Wilkoff, an anti racist, equity focused, growth oriented husband and father of three strange and beautiful children.
And I'm Jessica Raleigh, an educator, nonprofit entrepreneur, and change maker passionate about social justice, public education, and creating a sustainably joyful life.
Why don't we do our lovely little weekly check-in?
Week was really hard. My dad started chemo, well, like a new chemo on Friday, and he got really, really sick and is really sick. And, it's just hard to be so far away and to know that like he's so so sick and my stepmom is struggling so much and I'm here. Like I can't really even I text him, every day and that kind of stuff, but it's not like I can really even call him and like cuz he's sick. So,
Right, yeah, he's not in the talking mood, I'm sure. He,
yeah,
does he have some people that are sitting with him at all, or?
he has my stepmom. So, um and like he texted me this morning and said that he hates that she has to see him like this again and that she says that she's okay and he knows that she's not.
Yeah,
And that's just like a really hard text to get, in part because that's actually very reflective, and the way that my dad used his words and expressed what was going on was pretty unique. That's
for
something that's
for
pretty
him.
new. Yeah, that's something that's pretty new for him and like for us in our relationship. So that was hard. Just kind of crushes me. I can't do anything about any of that. And yeah, super helpless.
Did it just kind of cloud everything for you this week?
Yeah, it's like last week, like Wednesday, Thursday, I was just very quiet, really
Mm-hmm.
melancholy. Um, and then just have been distracted, like very easily distracted by it and my emotions and feeling a lot more overwhelmed trying to manage
Mm-hmm.
all of the things and the COVID things and the dad things. And it just becomes a lot to manage. And then I think, sort of to my frustrations that I think I was expressing last week, like, then I get to that place of frustration because what I was choosing for my life at this point was to date and to seek joy and to explore and to like try new things and see what I like and see what I don't like. And I'm finding it challenging to continue to do that, both in the way that I would like to and like engage in it in the way I would like to,
Right.
but also like it's been hard to, I don't know, it's just like you get so overwhelmed and you want to prioritize the self-care or the fun or the
Right.
whatever thing, but when you've got all the other stuff first, like I don't have a job right now, I'm trying to figure out the unemployment system, which is a big old mess.
Oh, really? Weird.
It's really not great. It's, yeah, it's like every other United States government system that's supposed to help its people, so that's great. And it's just like, I think at this point, it's just frustrating because I feel like all the stuff that I don't control, like the circumstances, are piling up. And then it puts me over the top and it doesn't leave room for the things that I want to choose to put in my life. So I just sort of, I just kept going this week. I was like, I'm not going to be resentful. I'm not going to like feel as though I have to stop my life. And then I just kept having to really, really push through when I was doing that. Like when I was on a date and I really just wanted to like cry. And, like those moments happen more and like the trauma triggers happen a lot more easily. Like things get brought up a lot more easily because I'm already like in that place. Like if my self care is on point, then it takes a lot more
Right.
for me to boil over or for those things to affect me. It's like I'm able to use my strategies. I'm able to like I know how to take care of myself if I have the capacity to do that. But I get in those moments where I don't feel like I have the capacity to do the taking care of myself in the way that I want.
Yes.
So that's been my week. But it's been a lot better this week than last week because I was just really angry last week. So this week was a different kind of anger, but I definitely felt like it wasn't in my grief process. I feel like I've moved a bit past the victim place, and that was really hard for me, but I was able to do it. So I'm glad.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like that's a huge part of of moving through the process, um, but it doesn't sound fun. That is for sure true.
It's not fun. I would like to at some point figure out how to learn and grow and life without it being hard mode for all of the amazing lessons. But maybe that's just not my my MO on this planet. I don't know. Maybe I'm too complicated, Ben.
Complex for sure. I don't know about complicated. I feel like complicated means that people have to like deal with your stuff
Deal with you.
and like just deal with it versus like figure it out as you are figuring it out too. Um,
Yeah, I
so
like that. How was your week?
my week was hard, but for very simple reasons. There's a lot going on with work trying to open up our application for August 1st. We've been also engaged in. So I was telling you a couple weeks ago about the precedent conversations around race and racism, and something that came out of that was a working group for outreach and admissions to try and tackle. All right, so how do we create a anti-racist outreach and admissions process? We have a sort of need blind merit based system, but it is not explicitly anti-racist. It is not explicitly like we haven't looked at every single angle to see what might need to be changed in order to support first generation college students and things like that. And so it was recommended that we get together with students, faculty, and staff and maybe do that. And so and so I've been co-leading that work, and so that's like taking a lot of thinking and trying to figure out what's our entry point here. The students are so impressive, and they just keep on pushing on. Okay, so how do we do this differently? How do we think about things in new ways, because that's all they have is new ways. They don't have all of the old ways of doing things. So that's been really cool. But yeah, we have been at the house trying to figure out the inside space. Now that we've got the outside space figured out, and we purchased our first new old furniture. It's a mid-century modern sort of couch and chair that looks very much out of Mad Men or something like that. It definitely does not look new, but it also doesn't look like really really old or something like that. And so we're trying to figure that out. Our idea that we've been sort of percolating is, how do we have a place that is comfortable enough to just want to sit, and to that we can put on a record on headphones, or we can listen to it out loud, and like everybody wants to be there, because that's what the outside space is now. How do we do that isn't focused around a television and things like that. And so that is also hard, but for really good reasons and things like that. So we're trying to figure that out, and it doesn't come without like cost or lots of decision making or those kinds of things. And so it becomes a challenge, but one that is quite fun to consider and to sort of brainstorm and like, do you like that? No, I don't like that. The idea of mid-century modern is actually fairly complex, and it means something I think a little bit different to me than it does to Kara. And so we are trying to figure out like where is the crossover in our aesthetic, and because there is considerable, but every time I show her something, it's like, no, that's terrible, and and so it's like, oh, okay, so not that part of mid-century. There's a different part that that we're trying to go for. But yeah, so that's been our week. Yeah.
Do you think that you and Kara have had similarities or the same aesthetic all along, or has it been different all along?
It has always been different. There has always been crossover. So she introduced me to really good like hip hop, and really good, I would say, more classic sort of aesthetics, in terms of like 50s, 60s, 70s kind of things. My aesthetic has always been like thrift store 80s, 90s, and she has picked up that a little bit, and has thrown her own spin on it, and then has gone through phases, and we, but we have always sort of figured out these are things that make us happy and make for a good space. We are never really in a disagreement around like what feels good or bad. Like, oh, this doesn't feel good in this space. Like, we are very rarely like, oh no, I love this. This is making me feel so good. That's and then the other person is sort of diametrically opposed. That's never been an issue, but it is those things of how do you make a space that is collaborative, and because you want it to be comfortable and I don't know, safe for both of us, for the whole family, right? It shouldn't be the goal is that everybody wants to be in that room. Nobody wants to leave the room in order to feel comfortable, right? And so how do we add all of that in? Because there is some sort of happy spot that we can find, but it is definitely not the same for everyone. And so how do you find the crossover for all five of us, and the activities of listening? I mean, the idea is that you're listening, reading, and doing very little watching other than people. And so that's kind of the space that we wanna do. So
That's neat. It makes me think about how you might universally design a space, like
mm-hmm.
apply UDL to space design, which we've done a little bit in the past. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think we've explored that a tiny bit, but then to think about it for like, I think in that context, when you're universally designing a space, you're trying to think of all of the users, and so you really are like universally designing it.
Right.
I think it's neat that there are these specific people who share this specific space, and that you could then universally design the spaces in your home for all the people to feel comfortable. And I like the way that you said that like it's not that everyone needs to be there all the time, but it's that people don't have to leave to feel comfortable.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
like that a lot.
Yeah. So that's what we've been working on. But we had separate challenges that we were working on,
Mhm.
and I would love to hear how you did with your split challenge, which was processing and expressing through means other than conversation. What was your preferred means other than conversation to sort of process and think things through?
I did more writing and I did more coloring.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I've been trying to just like not um, not have like a specific thing in mind that I'm going to journal, but
Mm-hmm.
just sort of start and then just as best I can let everything just come out. And so that was helpful. I think it allowed me to get clarity a few times on things before I talked to somebody about them. So that was helpful.
Mm. Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Um, and uh, finding that clarity in a way that you can really see, right? It is visual, is really interesting. Would you care to share what you were ended up drawing?
So with the coloring, I have just like I'm looking to the left because I have a stack of coloring books,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'll just print if I have something that I want in particular, I'll just go online and print something out.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to use coloring as kind of like more meditative,
Mm-hmm.
and um, sometimes I'll keep like my journal next to it because it's sort of like back and forth. Like as I'm thinking with the coloring, then I'm like, oh yeah, journal that out, then come back to the coloring. So
Yeah. And so it is the color itself that is expressive, and meditative in that way.
mhm, yeah, and I think the process, like you don't have to always um, be in complete stillness in order to infuse the benefits of stillness into your life. And so I've been trying to figure out what are the places all throughout my day where I can essentially I'm trying to just figure out how do I live my best, most holistic life in harmony that I can. And I feel like in order to do that, I can't have like an hour earlier in every morning that I get up so that I journal and then like meditate for 5-10 minutes and then like, go through my day. I
Mm.
need little bits all throughout. So finding those different practices that are um, that bring that stillness into my life or that allow me to like find that kind of calm, like take a deep breath kind of moment. Like those, I think those moments throughout the day are what I'm trying to find. So like with the coloring, writing, sometimes I'll write on post-it notes. I did
Mm.
that a little bit last week. Like I didn't have a journal or whatever with me, so and the thoughts were kind of separate. So it just I don't know. I kind of design thinking it, I suppose.
Where did
But
you put them? Where did you stick them?
well, I just sort of put them all out in front of me, and then they went in my journal later. The
That's cool.
repository of
Right,
all
yeah.
things.
I mean, that makes a huge amount of sense, to sort of get the ideas out, but then put them in some kind of, whether it's logical or simply, some place to hold them and keep them. I like that very much. Well, my challenge was sitting with discomfort, and did a lot of contemplation this week around that. And I realized, and not that I needed convincing, but I realized that I live possibly the most comfortable life of anyone that I know. I If I do not want to be challenged, I do not have to be. Right? I am white. I'm male. I have enough money to live. I have 3 children. I have a supportive family at home. I have parents that support me. Like I don't have to be uncomfortable if I do not choose to be. And so that then led me to think about, why am I choosing discomfort? Why am I choosing to challenge myself in ways that I don't have to, right? Like I could just exist and not have to be challenged or have to I mean, to a certain extent, I don't have to put forth a huge amount of effort in order um, to make things work in some ways, right? And so, I mean, and that's oversimplifying everything in my life quite a bit, but the ultimately the reason that I came up with why I want to be uncomfortable, why I want to push myself and challenge myself, is that it is not good enough for me to live in comfort. It is not good enough for only this type of person to have a comfortable life and to not have to try. And I do try very hard, but it is because I am desperate for I am desperate for other people to feel some of the comforts and some of the privilege that I have been bestowed, that I have inherited, that, like all of those things, it's because it's not good enough for me to have that and to just sit with it. And so ultimately the place that I came to and what I challenged myself with in terms of sitting with discomfort was essentially, how do I listen to other people who have a huge amount of comfort and listen to the place that they're fearful of that change and of the challenge that society presents to them. So I am thinking about. I wrote it down. I don't know if you've been following the Karens saga, but the many people, many mostly white women, who are being, called Karens because they are, being challenged by their privilege and are you know, saying incredibly terrible things to other people or pointing guns at other people. Other people who are choosing to not embrace the discomfort, but rather to attack anything that is uncomfortable. And I wanted to be able to hear without coloring it and saying you are a terrible person and I am better, right? To listen without feeling superior. And that to me is something that is actually really uncomfortable. For a very long time, I could not sit and listen to Donald Trump, many other right-wing folks. I could not just sit and listen to them without getting so angry or having to turn it off or to turn down the volume. I couldn't sit and listen to what they were saying and the fear that comes through and the anger and vitriol that they are saying without coloring it and saying, I am better than that. I am better than you. And the reason why I felt like this was an important thing for me to sit with is because it isn't productive to do those things. I'm saying I want to be uncomfortable. I want to change things. But if I am not able to sit and listen to people who are essentially like me, right? They have a huge amount of privilege, but have made different choices, right? They have chosen to ignore societal problems or chosen, and it isn't, I am better than that. It is, how do I change their mind? How do I change things so that it isn't about, being woke and I am woke and you are not, and therefore, like, we are never going to meet. We are never going to be able to have conversation. We are never, because I can't even hear you and you can't even hear me, right? And so that was something that I feel like I need to be able to listen to these things. I don't know what to do with them necessarily. Like, I don't know how to change people's minds because ultimately they have to make some of those choices too. But it is enough for me to sit with that discomfort of um, the dissonance between my own privilege and what I want for others, and then also to see that privilege so, consciously being displayed, and that they just, don't care that they have that, or that they are, as comfortable as they are. So I'm gonna stop talking because that's a lot, but that's what I've been playing with this week, and I want to get better at listening to all of the people and being able to not have to turn away just because I'm, feeling disgusted or superior.
I like that a lot.
Great.
Keep us posted.
Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds like not a one and done kind of deal.
It
So
it, it
keep
is
us surprised.
correct. It is my sincere hope that it is not one and done. All right. So, do we have any good inputs that you would like to talk about, or outputs that you have made that you would like to discuss this week?
I'm sure I do. Will you explain what this means first, and then I'll be able to answer your question?
The inputs and outputs?
Yeah, I don't know
We've been
what
doing
is
this every week.
our show. I don't know why. Why is this different? Help me understand.
So inputs, things that we have been experiencing, reading, watching, and talking about. Right? These are the inputs of our life, and they influence us. They are um, they deal with behavioral health. They are all of the things that we talk about in the intro. Right? So so what are the inputs, and then if they happen to be things that we have output, right? You created a video, you made a piece of art that you're really proud of, like all of those things are their outputs that you would like to also discuss. So that is the idea of inputs and outputs.
Thank you for clarifying that for me and for our many listeners.
Right.
um, I have been um, I have been listening to a lot of the conversations that are happening around going back to school in the fall. And I am very concerned at the number of uh, parents, citizens, voters, people with power, people with privilege, people with money who are weighing in on all of the plans that are being developed and all of the ideas that are being shared. Um, and I see a severe lack of the voices of teachers and kids and families, underprivileged families, let me be clear. Um, and so it's really been something that I'm trying to, like, I already know my opinion. I already know where I stand on it. And so I've been trying to just listen and absorb and just like see if I'm trying to just gain as many different perspectives as I can and as many different inputs on the topic as I can, because I think otherwise I'll probably just get so angry and I won't hear anything. I won't hear anything because I was in Target a few weeks ago and I overheard a conversation. It was one of those situations where, two families had sort of bumped into each other at the store, and then they were chit-chatting and talking about all the things. And they were talking about going back to school. And the entire conversation was about, well, I already went back to work 4 weeks ago, and well, these kids need to be in school. Well, we can't have them home. Well, I need them.
Yes.
I,
Yep.
me. And there was never, and I may have lingered behind the masks for, a creepy amount of time if someone were to have seen me there. But I was browsing the masks while I was eavesdropping. And it occurred to me that like they talked for a good 10 minutes. They never once said anything about teachers or the staff. They never once said anything or even just like wondered or asked questions about, well, how will that actually work? Or what does that mean for, like, even to the extent of, do you, like, what do you think your child's experience is going to be when you send them off to school?
Right.
Because if you think that what you're doing is just getting like your 8 hours a day back, you're not, because you're getting a kid who's going to come home who's going to be like messed up at best
Yep.
and probably experiencing some trauma and trying to process a lot of things all at once that the adults around us are not processing right now. So like I'm just seeing all these layers, and it's that's why I'm holding my head, because I'm just like, this is going to be very bad. And I also think that it's important because I thought maybe pandemic would be the thing that would get that would start to turn the tide for public education, and it didn't. It only took a couple of months for everybody to go back to not only treating teachers like shit, but acting as though they're disposable. And I'm not okay with it. Like the number of teachers who experience anxiety, I didn't have anxiety until I was in the classroom. The only time I've ever had panic attacks is while I've been teaching.
Hmm.
Like that is a very real, normal thing in education. And now you're going to add to that masks and cleaning procedures
Yeah.
and walking kids in a certain, and it's just like it's too much. And the friends that I have who are teachers, like I don't want to say they're losing their minds, but they kind of are losing their minds. Like just every minute of every day, they're trying to not think about it and they're trying to not just let it consume them because they're so worried. I have some friends who are like, I have some friends who are really trying to decide, like, is it worth it for me to go back into my school? Like, I saw an infographic the other day that listed, based on the numbers so far, it was projected data about what will happen if slash when we send kids and staff back into schools.
Hmm.
And it showed the number of children and the number of adults who will die, and it's over 1,000.
Yeah.
I still don't understand how one child dying is okay, let alone thousands. Why one teacher dying is okay. Like every other country, they're figuring out their shit. And all we're doing is creating more shit and just like blaming each other and not solving it at all. And it's so frustrating to me because I just, I wish that the general public had a better understanding. Like they're clueless. They have no idea.
Some of the most interesting things that I've read this week are around, when a politician or someone who is sort of a decision maker is saying that the kids should go back to school. They have to be in school. It's better for their well-being and their emotionally and physically. And, that's one of the only places that they can get, a meal, which is not untrue, in some many cases. Um, but all of the replies back to this are, yes, you are 100% right on that. Kids are not going to be the most impacted necessarily by the pandemic. They likely will not get as bad of cases. They will get cases because the kids spread germs like crazy, right? Like this is not a new phenomenon. This is not like a special kind of germ that is less somehow less um, contagious. It's actually more. But it would be one thing if the children taught themselves and lived alone, but they don't, right? There are other humans involved in schools, and to sort of make believe that they are somehow alone in the school and they are the only ones who can get sick, and that none of those other people who are in the school have families or people that they are bringing things home to. You were talking about the impact on students and teachers, but I am far more worried about teachers' spouses, their children. Like, I mean, think about it. So I was talking with a friend of mine this week, and he was saying, so what if you have a two-teacher household and they both go to different schools? Your kids, maybe you have three, all go to different schools. That is five different populations potentially that are coming into that household. The idea that none of those people are going to get sick is ludicrous. And and, and so, it really comes down to all of the time that we have squandered, all of the testing that we are not doing, and there's no way to make this safe. There is just better and worse at this point, and I am not okay with people who are not going to be in those classrooms making those decisions for those people. Whether it's the not involving the children, not involving the teachers, like there are so many other stakeholders that are not being consulted right now, and to do a blanket statement to say like all schools have to go, full time, is insane. Like it just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I'm interested. Are there any particular voices that you have found really compelling, or ideas that you've taken in that you feel like, oh, there is something here that is worth exploring more in depth?
What I was thinking about when you were talking was the argument that children need to be in schools for their physical health, their mental and emotional health, that they need to receive their education. All of these things are true in a typical school year. And so every single argument is trash to me because we're not talking about a typical school year, and we're not talking about kids getting to run around and play on the playground. We're not talking about kids getting their physical education. Like, one, if you think that kids are getting adequate physical education or adequate anything else in school, you should look into that because they're not. And two, how do you think that's all going to work with children and social distancing? Like, first graders, what are you going to do in gym? Have them run in place? Like, that's only going to last for so long. The behavior problems that we're going to experience because our kiddos have been cooped up potentially in very unsafe environments for so long with no services and no contact to the outside world in any way, shape, or form. Like, it just makes me so angry that there are school districts right now who are preparing their teachers, and by preparing, I mean sending out a bunch of memos and emails that contradict each other.
Yeah, so many.
So, and that they're saying, okay, well, we're just going to start virtual, and then we'll have these different plans, and we'll just figure it out, and it'll be fine. Like, what? Is this going to work out? You think it's just going to work out? It's one. We're talking about something you can't control. Like, it's a virus. You don't get to decide. And second of all, if our kids are going back into the schools after, how many months will that have been? Like, aren't we all just going to start spreading stuff even more because we've been at home?
Yeah,
Like, our immune systems surely are much different today than they were in January.
there are so many ways that we can make ourselves safer. To choose to do nothing, none of them, right, and simply hope for the best feels like the antithesis of planning, of care, right? Like it really does seem like we don't care about one another if we are making these decisions. And to me, that's certainly not good enough.
My take on it is that um, money runs the United States, and you can't have an economy, even a bare minimum economy, if you don't send every adult human who has children, if you don't send those children away from the parents for a significant amount of time every week. There's no way that our economy will continue the way that certain privileged people want it to if kids are still at home. And it's going to, I think it also will force a lot more awareness and hopefully then action for the families who don't have any privilege, like no privilege whatsoever. And you're saying, oh, well, they're just going to stay home and do school. And okay, how in the heck are they going to do that? Like, there's just so many things, so many steps that are just sort of being like ignored.
Yeah, we'll figure that out later.
Yeah, like, but it'll be like this. It'll be fine. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm very worried. Very worried.
Yeah, and I think that you have every right to be worried. It is strange to think about people who are not worried, right? Like, how could you not be worried about this? Um, it presents to me, I think, maybe a challenge for us. Um, so uh, this moment, we have decisions. We have the ability to make decisions for ourselves and to make decisions about the way in which we talk to our friends, to our family members, um, to think about the people that we have influence over, right? We don't have influence over everyone, but that we have influence over some. Um, what kind of a challenge might be best for deciding um, deciding what to say to those people um, is yeah. So I'm interested in your thoughts on what's a good challenge for us to tackle, because I've come up with the last few, right? What's a good challenge for us to tackle this week that might be a way to either have a better conversation, to change the conversation, or to simply, um, listen better the way that we are, so that we can hear the voices that are not being heard.
I think that the challenge is something like us listing all of the things that we're worried about, like all the things we know have to be addressed,
Hmm.
to list those things. And then the other list is things you hear.
Hmm.
I'm going to list everything that I can think of that needs to be addressed. Like, if I'm in charge of public education, these are all of the things that I'm thinking of. And then I want to listen to educators and students and staff. So I think the challenge needs to be listening to the voices that we aren't hearing in the
Mm-hmm.
mainstream,
Ah,
and then seeing like if there are similarities or things like that.
I like that. That's very cool.
Okay.
So the ability to listen to voices that are not currently being heard widely, right? And listing those things, and then also listing out what we know is um, it's going to have to happen.
Things that we should be thinking about.
Things that yeah, and it does become that worry list like that we were sort of talking about, right? Like, these are all the things that I'm worried about right now. And so that worry list, and then the things that people are actually saying. I think that those are two really good lists, and we can share those next week.
You're Ben, and I'm Jessica, and we've really enjoyed finding the both and perspective as we've talked about our lives, families, and the people and things that are important to us.
If you would like to add your own both and perspective or just view the full show notes for this episode online, you can find it at bothandpod/11. And if you have questions or just want to tell us that you like the show, you can let us know at feedback@bothandpod.com or by leaving a review wherever you heard this podcast. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and we'll talk to you again next week.